Hey there everyone, Dave Keller here with Market Misbehavior. Today we're going to talk about the S&P. What are the chances that it pushes above 4,600 here in December 2023? So the S&P 500 has had a pretty incredible run from late October now to early December. We did some videos recently about the NASDAQ 100, the QQQ, 4 different probabilities, different scenarios, and what the probabilities may be between now and mid-January. We put links in the description for those videos. If you missed those, make sure you go check those out. Great way to expand your thinking, broaden your perspective going into the beginning of next year. Today we're going to talk about the S&P 500, also testing resistance around 4,600. There's support not too far below current levels. There's a price gap with a low around 4,450. So what sort of conditions can we analyze between these extremes? We're going to talk about the RSI, the Relative Strength Index, currently or recently overbought for the S&P and a lot of other stocks as well. That might give us a little color about what the path in December may actually look like. Before we get to the charts, by the way, if you like this sort of thinking about investor decision-making, technical analysis, and market history, why don't you like the video if you could? Also, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It'd be great to have you along this journey with us. Before we get to the charts, one more thing I'd like to tell you about. Are you looking for a good holiday gift for friends and family? What about an Audible gift membership? Charlie Munger, longtime collaborator of Warren Buffett, unfortunately passed away here recently. He was quoted as saying, "In my whole life, I have known no wise people over a broad subject matter area who didn't read all the time. None. Zero." He suggested that a successful investor is a voracious reader. You need to be a sponge for ideas and not just about the markets, about other things. Well, with my own Audible membership, I've listened to things like financial market history and behavioral finance books, self-help and productivity books, things like Stephen Covey and Dale Carnegie, for example, and also even fantasy literature by Robert Jordan, J.R.R. Tolkien, and others. It's often difficult to find time to read, to sit down with a book, quiet your mind, quiet your surroundings, and focus on it. But I do have time in the car. You might have time in a commute. You might have time just while you're working out or some other time. And for the people that you love and that you care about, what a great way to improve their opportunities to grow by giving them an Audible gift membership. If you go to marketmisbehavior.com/Audible gift, you can give them a fantastic gift membership and give them the opportunity to learn. By the way, if you're looking for a gift for yourself, you want to treat yourself for a successful year, set you up for success in the year to come, just go to marketmisbehavior.com/Audible. Maybe a good opportunity for a free trial of the Audible membership for yourself. Now back to the video. Okay, so here we're looking at the chart of the S&P 500. You can see the rally I mentioned from the lows in late October to now where we're at in early December. And if you think about it, right, we hit a top around 4,600 here in late July. We had a 3-month decline, August, September, October, getting down to almost 4,100 the last week in October. In the last 5 weeks, the S&P 500 has literally retraced 100% of the way back up to test resistance at 4,600. Now, anytime you have a market that is testing a key support or resistance level, I always like to look at the momentum on the bottom, right, the RSI indicator. This tells us a lot about sort of the strength or the interplay between up and down days or supply and demand that happens along the way. And you'll notice as the S&P has approached this 4,600 level, we've started to become overbought. And what overbought means is basically we've gone up a lot, right? We've had an incredible run in a very compressed period of time. As a result, the up days are a lot stronger than normal. The down days are a lot less strong than normal. And as a result, the RSI goes above 70, which is the overbought threshold. Now, when a stock or an ETF becomes overbought or an index like the S&P, I think it means 2 different things. Number one, it suggests we're probably in the later stages of the tactical rally, right? Sort of the short-term move that has pushed us up toward 4,600, probably to their later stages, because when a market has become overbought, usually means we're sort of overdue for a pullback, right? We probably have to reset a little bit, even if we end up making a new high soon after. For an example of that, you can see that from June of this year when you became overbought, as we actually tested, just got above 4,400. We pulled back for about a week and a half, pulled back to that sort of 4,300 level before before rallying and making a new swing high, getting up to that level of 4,600 in late July. So the first thing it suggests is we're probably at the later stages of this rally. At least a brief pullback is probably in the cards. But the second thing it usually suggests is that the trend is still strong. Because if you are going to get a broader rotation lower, it usually doesn't just happen with a brief overbought signal like you had in June. You need to look for more for a bearish divergence, right? Which is what we saw in July. The June high, you can see we became overbought. We came out of that overbought region. We pulled back briefly. We made a new high in July, or a new swing high. We became overbought once again. Then we had another new high in late July, and the RSI was actually sloping downwards. That's that bearish momentum divergence we've mentioned in a number of our videos, where the price is going higher and the RSI is going lower. So at this point, it's looking a little bit more like the June high, suggesting a brief pullback before a move higher. Now, if we do get a pullback, what sort of levels might you want to look for? I think what's great about the chart of the S&P and the NASDAQ 100, by the way, is they both have a very clear level of potential support. And that's based on the price gap that we had in early mid-November. This is one on a Tuesday. We had the October CPI number that came out. Really, the market's gapped high very quickly, came out before the open. Everything opened a lot higher and pushed even further because it really confirmed the likelihood that the Fed was done hiking rates. And as we saw in November, and as we will most likely see here in December, no additional rate hikes, barring some huge change in the economic data. But for now, seems fairly certain that we won't have any additional changes in interest rates in 2023. What that means, though, is if we do get a pullback, that's a really clear opportunity for potential support. I would say highly likely you'd find support if we did pull back there, which means a pullback to 44.50 could set us up for a nice rally going in for another retest of that 4,600 level. And if we do get a pullback, which we haven't had since late October, that's where I think you actually could get that upside momentum to get above 4,600. Now, for another illustration of what those overbought and oversold conditions actually look like, I'm looking at the S&P 500, but now I'm going back to the beginning of 2020. So I'm going back to the COVID low in March of 2020. The other thing you need to remember is when the RSI becomes overbought, besides just suggesting a short-term overextended market, it also tends to mean that we're more in a bullish phase. Look at mid-2020 through all of 2021. Look at how the RSI often became overbought on rallies. When we pulled back, the RSI would usually bottom out around 40, wouldn't get much below there. When we finally did break well below 40 in early 2022, it suggested, it really indicated that this bullish trend for the previous 18 months was probably exhausted. We were now in more of a bearish phase. You can see here we very rarely got above an RSI of 60, although we did briefly in August, which was one of the things that caused me to be way more optimistic than I should have been given the rally and the retest of the 200-day. But it was that RSI getting above 60 that really told me to consider the possibility of a retest of the previous highs. We obviously stayed in a downtrend until the fourth quarter. From there, though, you can see in 2023 we reversed. We start becoming overbought on rallies. The RSI doesn't get much below 40 on a pullback. Now that changed here, of course, in August, September, October. You can see that the RSI went back down to the bearish range, confirming this downswing. And now we're back up to the overbought conditions. Now it could be an August 22 kind of freak thing before we make a new low. I would say much more likely that this overbought condition suggests that the longer trend is probably positive going into 2024. But again, the fact that we're testing resistance and we're overbought while we're doing so tells me highly likely you get a pullback from the recent rally. Now, it's not just the S&P and the NASDAQ that have this particular configuration. Here's Home Depot with a nice rally off the October low, currently overbought. Here's KeyBank in the financial sector, one of the regional banks, breaking above the 200-day moving average for the first time since March, also becoming overbought, just getting out of that overbought region here this week. Here's 3M, an industrial company, obviously, one of the larger weights in the XLI. A nice rally. It was actually a new 52-week low in late October. You can see the rally getting above the 200-day, but also overbought. So all these stocks that are overbought, again, overall, I think it means the conditions are improving, and it's part of a broader improvement in some of those non-growth areas like financials, technology, industrials, and other sectors. But it also means that there's a bit of a pullback maybe imminent for some of these names that have had such a run. Now, you also can look at Microsoft, and one of the things we noticed on the chart of the S&P 500 over the summer was that bearish divergence, right? Remember, we had the peak in June, but then we made another peak in July, and there was that bearish momentum divergence. That's kind of what we've seen with Microsoft here recently, right? Look in November, higher highs in price. We're overbought on The first one, we're actually sloping downwards. You actually recently have a bearish momentum divergence. Now, for now, it's actually stabilizing, but it'll be interesting to see if we get a further pullback, maybe to the 50-day moving average. Maybe the RSI gets back down to that 40 range. That would still actually be a constructive long-term pattern. Just speaks to the weakness here in the short term. What do you think about the S&P 500? Currently overbought, testing that 4,600 level. Do you think the S&P pushes above 4,600 and finishes the year above or below that level? Don't forget to drop a comment below. Let me know what you think and why. For Market Misbehavior, I'm Dave Keller. Be well, stay safe. We'll talk to you again soon.